All right, we are live. Hey, everybody, how you doing today? I'm glad you're here with us, and welcome to the Curse of Oak Island and Beyond live stream. I'm your host, Jeff Freeman, and right over here we have my very special co-host today, Gretchen Cornwall. Welcome, Gretchen.
Welcome. Thank you. I appreciate being here today.
Oh,
Thank
it's
you,
a
Jeff.
pleasure to have you, and with your expertise in and everything concerning the Knights Templar, and also your work with the Team Templar North America. I couldn't do this without you. I really thought it was great to have you, and when you offered to come on or accepted my offer to come on, I was just very, very happy about that. So thank you for being here today.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So today we're going to step away a little bit and go to the beyond side of our group, and we are going to have on, as you well know already, our very special guest today, Carl Cookson and Hamilton White. Now, you will remember that both of these gentlemen are on the Discovery Channel TV show, The Lost Relics of the Knights Templar. And they have some very, very interesting things to talk to us about with that today. And I'll bring them on in just a moment. Before I do that, I would just like to say, and bring this little banner up here I got on the bottom that say, for those of you that are watching on the YouTube side, thank you for being here. Appreciate that very much. And we have some folks out there also from the Twitch side. For the YouTube side, if you would, right down in the corner, get my finger pointing in the right direction. Down there's a little red button that says subscribe. If you would be so kind to just subscribe to our show. And if you like our content, give us a thumbs up. That kind of helps us to know how we're doing and be able to bring you better content in the future. So thank you very much for being here. And also the folks over on our Facebook, on our Facebook group and on that side as well. Thank you guys for being here. I see a lot of common names coming up there. Thank you, Jennifer, and all you guys showing up here today. Thank you very much. Now, we did have a little bit of an issue today with the getting Hamilton connected. So he was able to call in. So he's actually on the phone with us. You won't see his smiling face on there, or his fedora hat that he loves to wear. I don't know if he's wearing it right now, but that's an awesome hat. I love that thing. But I'm about ready to bring them on. And without further ado, let's do that. Let's go ahead and bring up Mr. Carl Cookson. Welcome. And to you too, Hamilton. Hamilton, are you there? Oops, I got to turn him up.
Yeah, I can hear me.
There he is. Sorry about that. I had you turned down.
Yeah, no, I'm here.
Great. Thank you guys again so very, very much. I'm very honored that you would come here and spend a couple hours of your afternoon with us today. I'm really, really happy with that, and just feel very good about you being here, and that's great. I'm sorry, go ahead. So basically what I'd like to do to kind of get started, as I do with our guest for the most part, is I talk about a little bit about your past. And Carl, I'd like to start with you if we could. Now, you got collecting early on in your teen years, I guess, with like things that go fast or motorcycles and things of that nature, did you not?
Well, I think the first thing I collected was stamps, like most kids used to be.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was advertisements and you'd send off, and he'd send you this booklet with all stamps in it for approval. Mm-hmm. And you kept the ones you wanted and sent the others back. And I did it for years, I used to really love them. And then I sort of found motorbikes then, and the stamps kind of faded away. And bikes and cars have become my main thing most of my life. And my dad was a biker, but, we used bikes for transport as well. It wasn't just... we bought a motorbike and we used that for leisure. My dad used to go to work on a motorbike, and sometimes he picked me up at school on the back of one, and it was great. It was very difficult not to get hooked on it at a young age,
Yeah. Now, speaking of your dad, there was I read somewhere that your dad was influential with you, telling you stories about medieval times and things of that nature. That kind of got you interested in that area. Is that true?
Yeah, actually in Liverpool, there's a place he took us to called Speak Hall, and it's an Elizabethan timber framed mansion. It's absolutely amazing. When you go in it, it's such it completely alters how you think of things, because as a child I'd never been in a place so old, and you just feel things that you don't normally see in your normal life. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we as kids we grew up on Robin Hood and King Arthur, the Knights of the Round Table, and there are loads of fantastic movies of medieval times, and some with some great American actors in it. It was funny. I remember as a child, I was listening to Tony Curtis getting interviewed, and he said it really gets on my nerves. He said you get British people saying, "Oh, he wouldn't have talked. They wouldn't have talked with an American accent." He said, "Well, he wouldn't have talked if it was an American accent because they were French, so it wouldn't have mattered whether it was, the French or English." But it was just a funny little thing. But I always remember looking at the buildings and the armour that they wore. One of the funny things, the mistakes they make in movies, is some of the buildings that they show are very old buildings. Well, it would have been brand new buildings in the day, and they wouldn't have had that twisted patina.
Yeah, you're right. You're exactly right. It would have been brand new back then. You're right.
Yeah, and the royal halls were in primary colors as well. If you go to Dover Castle, it's bright red, bright yellows, bright blue, because it's such a big dark space. They want to fill it with life, and they use these shocking primary colors that we would think would be tacky today. So I get annoyed that today all these films that are coming out, and that they all have a gray filter over them.
Mm-hmm.
They were really truly into color. Those who could afford it, they wanted color.
Like the churches, a lot of the churches.
Oh yeah,
actually painted in polychrome. So they weren't grey stone. They were very, very vivid.
Yes, Canterbury Cathedral, the whole front was painted. All the figures, the people on the front, they were all painted. And that was the show of the day, the TV show of the day. So an assault on the senses. So yeah.
And like the church is really up until the Templars, the Romanesque architecture is very dark, because they didn't have flying buttresses to put, naves on. They had the big. They brought light in with the Gothic architecture. So prior to that, churches and castles were very dark places.
Yes.
Well, we better not forget about our friend Hamilton that's waiting out there, and I wanted to introduce him real quick as well. Hamilton, I wanted to throw this question out to you as well, because I know that you got started around, I think it was the early age of 8, somewhere around there. I saw on the show that you started with your collection of your first coin, something like that. Was that right?
Well, no, probably before that. Prior to me actually having any money, I was just picking up rocks and stones and anything I could find that I could haul off home. But then I suppose aged 8, I discovered what money was, and then, you can go and buy things. This is a much better system.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, I guessing I was about 8, and it was just a little sort of hammered silver coin, and it just amazed me that you could actually go and get something that was sort of 800 years old. I mean, that was the start of the obsession, really.
Right. And it just grew from there, right? So once you were able to actually purchase things of, greater value, where would it end, right? I mean, if you have the ability to really do what you're doing now and going around and collecting these fantastic things of antiquity, I mean, that's got to be fascinating. I can't imagine. That's really how that fulfills your life at this point, right?
Well, I mean, it's all I've ever done. I mean, I had no interest whatsoever in school and education. To me, it just seemed pointless because I knew what I was going to do.
Right.
And I still appear to be doing it, really. And I assume I'll probably do it till I drop dead. I haven't got another alternative. Mm-hmm.
Now, I know that you're also involved in some other, I was reading about some of the other things that you do. You have it said, I read this portion, it said, in the Caribbean, where he is diving some previously unrecorded wreck sites. So you're a diver as well?
I mean, yes, I'm qualified as a diver, but I wouldn't go as far as to say I was a really proactive diver.
Okay.
But no, I've got a little business over in Nassau that is closed at the moment, like everything else.
Right.
But I've got a museum over there, which is all my sort of Caribbean piracy and slavery stuff.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's fascinating. And I know that you're also, it said, I read that setting up an exhibition in Russia to loan out his collection of Holocaust and World War II items. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I've been going over to Eastern Europe for a long time, and, I've got quite a lot of military stuff, a lot of sort of Holocausty stuff, and there was an idea on the table to do something over in Russia, but again, this sort of ghastly COVID problem has everything's taking a step back at the moment. We're all just sitting at home twiddling our thumbs.
Exactly. Yeah, I know what you mean. Hopefully, I don't know. Speaking of COVID, everybody over here were they started with a certain people that are to work their way down through getting the COVID vaccine, and that's being distributed out in the United States now. How's that going for you all over in the UK? Or is the vaccine becoming available for everyone there now too? Or
yeah, it's very relatively very easy now to
good.
to get a vaccine. Some people, it's funny because a lot of people don't want to take the vaccine, but some do. So it's probably a bit of a taboo subject. That really.
It is. Yep. And it's that way here too, as well. Yeah, for sure. So bringing this around to. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. I understand that the U.S. will be open, as it were, July 4th. So I don't know what that will mean for international travel yet. I have not looked that up, but I'm heading back to the UK. I'll be there on the 20th, and I've already received my UK invitation for a vaccine, but again, sliding past that. But things are going to open up, and people will be able to get back to their lives in the summer. We all desperately need that. We need the sunshine.
Oh, we do.
Be
Absolutely.
able to get out there with each other.
Yeah, for us, the big thing is the pubs are closed,
Yeah, exactly. You can't go hang out at the pub and have a pint, What's up with that?
But apparently, on the 12th of next month, they're opening up pubs who've got beer gardens. So everyone's having to book a table, and there's a lot of people going to be disappointed because there's not enough tables,
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So we need to get that, we need to get the numbers down so we can get that all open back up and get our lives back to normal. That's the main thing. I mean, we want to, be able to congregate with other people. Humans need to be with other humans. I mean, that's what we do. So we need to be around other people. And for you guys, I would imagine that, running around, and let's go ahead and segue into the show. The relics of the lost relics of the Knights Templar that you have on the Discovery Channel, which is a fantastic show, by the way. And I would have to think, I know that season 1 is out, have 5 episodes out right now. And then you guys are probably in the midst of or finishing up your work on season 2, which we're very happy about because I absolutely loved season 1. Watching those, I'd gone through them a couple of times, just fascinating stuff. So I'm hoping that this whole COVID situation hasn't, put a damper on what you're doing with that. So certainly hope.
We're very lucky actually because we started filming quite late, and we were very mindful of COVID and the lockdowns, and we just seemed to be surfing in front of each lockdown when we was abroad. So we literally managed to get 4 episodes completed. And we've just got the 5th now to do, which we've got a plan to make that happen. So it should be in the box, ready to get delivered to the broadcasters, and then probably air late fall for you guys, or sometime in the autumn. And we're like you. We don't get to see it till it's broadcast, which is
right. That's got to be a little bit frustrating too, because and we know, it's like some of the other shows that we are interested in. We know that when it comes to you guys, there is probably hundreds of hours of film being taken and following you around and going to these places and talking about the artifacts, and then we get to see bits and pieces that they put together in a 45 minutes of worth of film on a show that's an hour long. So we always wonder, what are we missing? Because there's hours and hours that we don't ever get to see, and you probably don't know.
See all of it because it's not all great,
Yeah.
It's they said, I think.
Yeah, I mean.
Go ahead, Hamilton. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, I mean, it's like you say, and I mean, what I find is when you do see the program, it's to my eye, it's like, oh no, it's what they didn't include. Because to my way of thinking, what's missing is always more interesting than what you're actually seeing.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's
Interesting.
that's just the way it is, I guess.
Yeah, it is. I'm sure, and so we always wonder if someday they'll take some of those things that we didn't get to see and they'll put together a show of those at some point, and add that to it. But being able to be in your shoes, and let's go back to the beginning. I mean, now you guys, if I remember correctly from the show, they talked about that you basically have had this what we're calling the hoard of artifacts or relics for about 10 years now. How did you get approached to? How did this come about that a TV show would be created on this?
Oh, well, it
You
was
go for
actually,
it, Mark. You've got better reception. I'm on
yeah. I mean, well, initially we done a private expose for Reuters because we obviously needed to release the information about the Horde to the world, and we used one of my buildings, me and my brother's building, which is an old courthouse in the town I live in, Knutsford. We had a private room there, and the BBC came and Reuters turned up, and they agreed to, sign non-disclosure agreement to not release it until we give them the nod. And in between that, Hamilton's friend was invited us down to his head office in London. He worked for a big media company. And Hamilton said, oh, should we bring some of the stuff with us to show them? And I said, yeah. So we drove down. I picked Hamilton up. He lives about an hour and a half away. And we picked the gear up. We drove into London. We managed to get underground parking in these swanky offices in London. And then we went upstairs carrying all these bags into these real posh glass office, like a conference room.
Right.
There's all people waiting. There's all this sort of fantastic memorabilia of all the films and TV shows this company was doing. And we just went in and sat down, and there was Hamilton's friend. There was this lady from America, and there was another guy from Ireland, and somebody else, and we didn't realise that what we were actually there for. I just thought we both thought we were just going down just for a chat and to see Patrick, but it turned out it was a fully blown pitch.
Wow.
We didn't know till the end of it.
We hadn't actually been told that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you really didn't know what you were walking into here. I mean, you're going to come in and show these artifacts.
When he was starting to get the gear out.
Wow.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hamilton, was you? So when did you?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it was really a friend of mine that I was at school with who was working for E1, is the name of the company. And he was like, oh, just come down, let's have a chat with a few people, and let's just bounce ideas around. And we didn't know that the lady from America was kind of their senior, is it commissioning editor, is that the right word? Or commissioning buyer, whatever you call it. And the guy who'd come over from Ireland, they had just signed a deal with his company to start developing programs. I mean, we didn't know him. We'd not met any of these people. And we just kind of sat there chatting away quite merrily, the same as very much like we're doing now. And they all sort of started getting excited and flapping their arms and getting very American TV executive about it. So we just sort of sat there looking at each other, and it's like, oh, right. Oh, okay. We'll make a program then. Oh, fair enough. But wasn't it, Carl? I mean, it was as vague as that.
Yeah, and it was funny. I mean, it went on for, it was quite about 2 hours, wasn't it? And
Yeah,
she was so excited. She says, oh, this is incredible. We can see a big show with this. And, we think, what's all this about? And the next thing we were sort of pulling stuff out, and it was just gobsmacked by the items we had. But really what the funny thing was is they were more intrigued by me and Hamilton for some reason.
Really?
So I think they saw the collection as something very important, but I think they thought they seen the sort of whole package of us being able to deliver that as a conduit to, to make a show somehow. And that's what happened. We didn't actually end up doing the work with the American lady, but we subsequently done the show, the production company in Northern Ireland. And it's a whole new world once you get involved. The terminologies and how the business works, it's really unusual. So the next thing they said is we're going to make a sizzle, and I said, "What's a sizzle?" And he said, "It's like a 5-minute taster of what a show could be."
Mm-hmm. A sizzle. Okay, I was wondering a sizzle. All right, yeah, that makes sense.
So the next thing, we got a phone call, and he said, "Oh, we're sending a camera crew down to yours," and so Hamilton come up to mine, and I was breaking it. I was really scared of being in front of the camera because I thought, I'll just freeze. I won't know what to say. It's I can talk till the cows come home in the pub or with me mates, but put a camera on, it's like, just like freeze. You wasn't frightened, was you, Hamilton?
Well, it didn't really faze me because, I'm a lot more laid back anyway. And, nobody really gave us any instructions. It's just like, oh, here's a camera crew. Just do something.
Do something.
Like what? Just unpack some boxes. Oh, okay, fair enough. It all just seemed very haphazard.
That's funny.
I thought the whole film industry would be some kind of run with Germanic efficiency down to the last second.
Right.
But it wasn't. It was just like, oh, let's go up the warehouse. Oh, here's someone with a camera. Oh, did anybody bring the battery for it? Oh, I'm not sure. Hang on. And then it's just like, oh, we'll point it at you guys. Go over there and unpack some boxes. And it was, again, it just seemed to me all very disjointed, but whatever we managed to produce, they turned into this little mini 5-minute movie that, I don't know, whoever it was seemed to like it, I think.
Well, when we saw that, we got invited down to another office somewhere, and we went down, and there was some other American people from some other channels, some big I won't say the name, but they'd come to see it. So again, we were doing a pitch without realising it. And the next thing, they turned the cameras on, this screen on, and lo and behold, there's the sizzle. And oh God, it was horrible for me listening to myself and looking to myself. It's just not.
It was perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
Well,
yeah, but it kind of worked, and although, as Hamilton said, it was quite random what they appeared to be doing when they were filming us. They put together the architecture of the show in that sizzle, and we done the filming of the period, and it's only actually when we've seen the show that we kind of get what we're supposed to be. Do you know what I mean? As people on it, because we couldn't visualize what it was, how we were going to present ourselves. Right. So doing the second series is a lot easier because we understand what we are.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's like before I just thought, how the hell are we going to pull this off? But we've got, you've got a good team behind you that do fantastic things, and they keep the story tight, and they make it so that people can enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it is, and that's the thing is, and you guys have come on, and you're, we just watching the show. I get the feeling that you guys are just out there having fun, doing what you're doing, collecting this stuff, and gaining history on it, and then taking these items and having them looked at, and having authoritative figures, I guess, or people that would know, examine these items, and it looks like you're just having a great time. So however you may have been uncomfortable making this happen, you pulled it off very well. I was very comfortable watching you guys. It just seemed like you've been doing this for a long time, in my point of view.
Yeah,
Well,
and
it's
you both
good.
have.
No, I think it's because we're not actually TV presenters, and we didn't actually intend to get on the television. So we kind of turn up, and we're our normal sort of selves.
Mm-hmm.
You're not actually presenting anything in like the traditional way. It's just we're kind of getting on with what we do anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And point a camera at us.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we're going to nice places and getting paid for it, which is very enjoyable.
Exactly.
You know, to get put up in a hotel and get your food and drink bought for you,
Mhm.
to make us go in great places, and we get to go into, you know, buildings with nobody in them, and you know, into places where people don't get. That's a real privilege and a fantastic thing for us to get the chance to do.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. And we've seen that on the show, and that's just, I mean, you're taking us to places. Of course, I've never been to the UK, so you're taking us viewers to places that we've never seen before. And of course, we're getting the narration, but you know, we get to see it kind of through your eyes on the show, which is just fascinating. And then also, like I said, you know, trying to work with the items that you have and get some answers to them, and by going and visiting these places. And I know, you know, speaking, let's jump right in with some of the items that you guys have, or that, you know, in the collection. And I guess you're calling it the Hoard. Now this, I guess, was initially, if I remember from what I've read correctly, this many of these items were found while they were looking for a graveyard for the Romans, or something like a Rome graveyard. Is that how that started? Or-
Yeah, I mean, the initial discovery was in 1960,
Mhm.
and it was entirely by chance. It was some Portuguese who were looking around what was a Roman settlement,
Mhm.
trying to find a Roman graveyard. Because, you know, the burial tradition with the Romans, you were buried with your valuables, your
Right.
gold and your money and,
Mhm.
you know, jewelry. So, I mean, at that period in time, it was a relatively common thing to do, to go and try and find Roman graveyards. By one of those quirks of fate, they were in the wrong part of town, which it wasn't known at the time because excavations and research hadn't been done.
Mhm.
And they just dropped on two little caches that were buried, we think, about sort of 20 feet apart.
Wow.
And that was the initial part of the hoard, which had got the most important pieces in, the chalices and the ritual vessels and the sort of agate pieces.
And where, and this was, where was this exactly now? This was, I've forgotten. I'm sorry if you mentioned that, but where was it? In Tomar?
In Portugal, yeah.
Okay.
It's one of the, it's probably the main Templar town, the most eminent Templar town in Portugal. You know, it's a stunning place. It was founded by a Templar called Galdin Paish, who was a magnificent character. There's a big statue of him in the
Yeah, we saw that on the show. Yeah, exactly. That's why, right in the square there. So,
well,
and
I
he
appreciate.
found,
Oh,
yeah. Go ahead, Gretchen. Sorry.
I'm sorry. I just I appreciate seeing different cities, such as in Portugal, Tomar. You brought a different slant to the entire Templar subject. Over the years, the focus is always on Scotland, but it's such a much bigger, broader story than that. And you have brought that to us through these incredible objects that were lovingly, skillfully, expensively created. And the poignancy I felt in the fifth episode, I won't see how it ends for everyone that watches, has not seen that yet, but to find out that the Inquisition did so much damage,
Yeah.
and that these objects were buried in such desperation and hope for a future. And they couldn't possibly have understood that it was going to take hundreds of years for them to be rediscovered. And they obviously fell into the right hands with the two of you. You know what you're looking at, you knew what you were doing. And I'm just so thrilled that over the course of a decade, you've been able to amass a museum's worth of very special sacred artifacts with the hand of the most enigmatic chivalrous order that has ever been created behind these objects, and it's so impressive. It's so exciting. So forgive me for gushing. I've seen each one of these episodes 7 times, and I learned something new each time. And I appreciate your expertise. You both have a skill set that is so important, and you know what you're doing, and that's so evident. And you are who you are. You're just real people, but you have a skill set that's impressive. So I just wanted to say thank you for what you've achieved for all of us. And for someone like myself, you are completely changing and lifting the game, the Templar game. And I've had so many people say to me over the last years, "Oh, everything that's knowable is done and dusted. You know, there's nothing else to discover." And I always knew that wasn't right. I said, "No, you wait and see. This is going to get more and more interesting." And here you are.
Yep.
Here you both are.
Much to show as well. You've got to understand that, you know, we only shown 5 items on series 1. And there's a big collection there, isn't there, Hamilton?
Yeah, I mean, it was very difficult because we didn't really know, you know, is it a 1 series, is it multiples, or what's going to happen, or we didn't even know the length of what each show was going to be. So it was really 1 item per show was how it was going to work out.
Right.
But you know, there's a couple of things in the background. But I mean, in total, there's out of the original Hoard and all of the other stuff, there's over 100 items.
Wow.
I mean, it's way more than we've discussed or we've shown pictures of. I mean, it's such a variety of things. I mean, the main and most important pieces were out of the Tomar Hoard, which we think was about sort of 25, 30 items in the original find, which has got the obsidian chalices and the better pieces in amongst it. But subsequently coming to light, there's been a lot of very, very interesting stone carvings with chalices and kind of grail worship on, and all the sorts of things that probably in period would have been considered heretical.
Yep. You know, and speaking of the chalice, I've got a picture of it here. You know, for some of the folks that haven't seen, whoops, that's the wrong one. Let's go get that out of there for a second. I had the wrong picture up. So, I mean, we've seen the chalice, of course, and got a chance to look at that. And then we heard a little bit about how it was created on the show, you know, and talking about, you know, first of all, the fact that I never realized that the, you know, obsidian being such a hard substance. And so that, and again, this is part of what I was leading to, is the fact that you guys are giving us education. Like Gretchen was saying, you're taking us to places that I've heard of Tomar, but I've never seen it or been able to really understand what all is there. And you're bringing that to light for us all. And then when they talked about this, you had this particular person, I've forgotten his name now, that was on the show that got to examine this chalice. And then he showed, you know, scratching it, you know, this other chunk of it that he had was something, and it was not making any mark at all. And then he finally scratched it with another substance that did mark it. And he was talking about how they used the tapping method to actually carve this thing out. And that just completely blows my mind at how much time was spent to try to make something like this. I mean, it had to be a phenomenal to hold this in your hands, I would have to think, right?
Yes, I mean, all of the pieces, you know, irrespective of whether it's the obsidian or some of the marble vessels or the agate, everything is absolutely the top quality that you could have produced at the time 800 years ago. I mean, obviously it's all by different craftspeople and probably in different countries, but I mean, you know, whatever it was that the Templars were commissioning, it was money no object, and it was make the best item that we've commissioned that it was possible to make at the time.
Right. And you would think obsidian can't be something that's easily obtainable. I wouldn't think that there's like, you don't hear about it that often.
No,
But
we think that came from the obsidian that the chalice was made of came from Armenia, which is a main source of obsidian. And obviously, you can imagine being such a valuable material that it would have been on the trade routes going up to Jerusalem and all the way to Alexandria and traded, with all different, along with spices, and it was one of the top commodities. And to actually carve it, you wouldn't have picked a low sort of ranking sculptor. You would have got somebody that really knew what they were doing to get their hands on that.
Yes,
right,
and dragon glass, as it's also known,
right, dragon.
had amazing connotations at that time. The tradition of the dragon across Europe is established, and of course that ties into Arthurian lore, which is the Templars were very keen on. And Chrétien de Troyes, or de Troyes, was a contemporary of Bernard de Clairvaux, and the Grail romances were being written about, sung about at that time. So Arthur Pendragon had dragon, and here you have this amazing chalice with these, and of course the Templars were the walking, talking Grail knights versus any embellished legendary lore. But the Pendragon story, I believe, is a tradition that has spread across Europe and was embraced not just by the British Isles, but of course there was the Vlad Dracul and the Order of the Dragon in Romania, Transylvania, etc. So that glass comes right out of that eastern part of Europe. So forgive me, I'm waffling, but that intrigued me highly as well.
Yeah, it's a fabulous piece. I don't know whether you can understand the size of it. It's a sharing vessel. It's not an individual vessel for one person.
Right.
So we think it would have been brought out and maybe passed around to each initiates possibly. And it's only conjecture. We can't say for sure what they did with them. But really, when you look back at these times, they are just all real people with the same emotions that we had and the same deductional skills that we had. So it's not really that far-fetched to say they could have done this and they might have done it like that, because we think that. So they would have thought in the same
right
way.
right And there's a really interesting book called The Holy Mushroom, and there are frescoes and murals that date back to the Middle Ages and those pivotal centuries, where it does indicate that they were experimenting on themselves and trying to become more creative and thoughtful in their prayers and meditations.
Yeah, we've gone down that road with that discussion, and I think there's a very high possibility that they did use psilocybin mushrooms in some form of ritual too. Because when you go into the Shirola in Tomar, which is the main temple. I mean, today there's a doorway on the outside, and it's accessed by another entrance. But when it was built, there wasn't actually a door on the building. It was accessed via a tunnel that came up into the inside of it. There's
Really?
yeah, and it would have only been for initiates of the Templar Order to have gone in there. It wasn't a church for the public. And then when you look at it today, it's embellished with Catholic sort of gesso, stuccoed, gilt frames, and all Vatican sort of ephemera. And they're literally just sitting on top of the original design work, which is all polychrome, and they're all really sort of quite psychedelic complex DNA strands and all sorts of fabulous, unusual matrices, and they've obviously gone a little bit faded over time. But in the day, they would have been highly vivid, and they would have had some real purpose and meaning of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what's so fascinating, I think, too, is that you've actually been there and you took us there. But the things that you guys have seen has just, it makes me think, man, I got to get over there. I've got to go see this. And you're not only creating that for everybody that, has an interest in Knights Templar and these places that you've been to. You're creating that and you're showing us, which is a fantastic part of the show. And not only taking these artifacts and working with them as well. One of our very special friends that is part of our group, her name is Ruby Balaz, and she was asking about the material is also, some of this material is also known to have special elements of energy and mystic wisdom. Can you guys know? Can you share anything about that at all? You've mentioned holding it and how it makes you feel. I mean, is there something to that?
Definitely. I mean, one of the things we didn't do on the show was discuss any of the sort of esoteric experiences or strange things that happened to us on this sort of journey, or whatever you want to call it. And we didn't do that because we didn't want to pollute or corrupt the narrative of the items in their own right, And,
right.
And we thought it might have been, it might have damaged the story, so we didn't really go there on that. But certainly, when you hold some of the items, you can feel things. Some people don't, but I do. Hamilton has.
Go ahead, Hamilton.
I was going to say, certainly the two obsidian vessels, the one that wasn't actually in the first series is a little bit smaller than the one that was featured. But I mean, out of all of the group of vessels, that one is the one that specifically the odd few people we've let somewhere near it. I mean, pretty much everybody gets something from it. I mean, it's very hard to describe until you've actually picked it up and handled it.
Yep.
It's just got something about it that's very hard to describe with words. And if you start going down the route of, it's got mystical energy, you kind of, I don't know, we feel maybe we're kind of going to get branded a little bit away with the fairies in the New Age. But it isn't at all. I mean, it genuinely isn't. A lot of what I would call perfectly normal, intelligent, well-balanced people who aren't at all into the spiritual world have picked it up. And you just get it, you pick it up, and the moment you're handling it, it's got this something or other about it, a bit like when you walk over ley lines or energy lines. If you're receptive to it, it's just there, you feel it, and you can't really tell anybody else why. It just is.
Right. Yeah, and I agree with you.
All of these objects and ancient churches are meant to stir emotional responses from a human being. They're these tall, tall structures that you keep looking up and up and up. And most people at that time, they didn't live in a dwelling that had a second floor. So, you find yourself in this structure that is breathtakingly, impossibly beautiful and impossible to build. And the smaller objects that you hold as well are meant to elicit a response in miniature of that same, breathtaking awe.
Well, it's not only the objects. When you actually look at some of the constructions of the buildings, it's the position of them. So many of them, like Tomar and Chartres over in France, the locations where they're built, they're either over the intersections of ley lines or they're over the intersections of underground waters and streams or magnetic energy fields. It isn't an accident that these places were constructed here. It was thought out very deliberately.
I think
Yeah.
you're exactly
A lot
right.
of the
Absolutely.
sites were actually former Celtic worship sites as well. So they're not.
Yes.
Short was a former worship site before the Templars built on it. They picked the best places to connect all this energy and to perform rituals on those sites, and they would have all linked up. Whatever you put into them or whatever you take out of them is coming off this grid system, and we don't know what it is today. I mean, it's a bit like if you look at what Tesla was doing. He was looking at the energy grid in the air. And maybe it's connected. Maybe they, there was some knowledge that we've lost now, or
Right.
we don't know. But the Templars knew something about it. They on that side, and they were also, very sophisticated in the appreciation for the aesthetic. So you can see with the Gothic architecture and these items that they're beautifully, exquisitely designed, and there's a reason for that. Because we all know when you see nice things, it makes you feel good straight away. There's a positive payback the instant you see something. Conversely, when you see ugly architecture or ugly items, you're repulsed by it. You don't want to get close to it.
Yes, and it's about bringing as above, so below. We've all heard that one so many times, but it's true. And light, Vézelay, the Church of Vézelay, dedicated to Mary Magdalene. I believe it's 8 pools of light. They positioned the cathedral so that I believe it's the summer solstice, which is, of course, John the Baptist's feast day is the 24th. The solstice is 21st of June. But you get these 8 pools of light that come in right down the center of the aisle, leading right up to the main altar. So it's a stunning effect. And light is energy. And absolutely, I agree with that. And of course, today we do have different instrumentation that can measure.
Yeah, and the
fields.
number 8 seems to be a big recurring number within the Templar order. We see this number everywhere we go, with columns and altars, and even the amount of sort of initiates that would be in, say, the Chirel. We think it's 8+. Joe, the guy in Portugal, said it's 8+1, which brings the number to 9, and the 1 would have been the Grand Master. That was servicing whatever.
Hamilton, I wanted to ask you, do you have a favorite piece?
Whatever comes next. That's what for everything with collecting is whatever you've got, you're never totally satisfied with, because there's always another thing to come. So whatever comes next is the favourite for about 3 days, and then it's no, what else can I have? I'm the same with everything I collect. I mean, I know Carl has got pieces out of the Hoard that he really has a leaning to, and I think other people do. But it's just, I don't know, I have a different view of everything, that it's like, I can't be satisfied and stop. There's always something next to come, and I'm absolutely convinced that what's coming next is going to be better than what I've already got.
Wow.
And that's probably what drives you on. That's
Yep.
probably why you get up in the morning and you still, I want to go back to Portugal, I want to go over to Eastern Europe, there's something better to have. It's just, it's an obsession. It's a total utter obsession for me.
I know how you feel. Yes. Carl, what about you? Do you have Hamilton alluded to that you might have a few favorite pieces that, have we seen those yet? Or
You haven't seen, it's the smaller obsidian chalice, the individual chalice that is the magic one. That's the, if you wanted one item, I'd be walking away with that. But obviously the sword is amazing, because it's a boys and toys thing with swords. We like weapons and stuff, and I just think I try to imagine where that's been and what events have sort of happened around it. it's fantastic. And also when you actually hold it, they're so well balanced, and you can see how they were used. They were designed perfectly, and it's great for us as well because these items are not behind a big sheet of plate glass in a museum.
Exactly.
We set them up, and we don't have to wear white gloves when we're doing it either.
Yeah.
I noticed that. Yes. Yes.
That's neat. And the fact that you're bringing this out so that we all can see it as well, because as you guys have alluded to previously, you've talked about the fact that they're, I guess we lost Hamilton. Hopefully he can call back in. I'm going to send him a message here real quick. But you have people that would have artifacts that they don't ever show it. They keep it locked in a basement, or they keep it locked in their own personal storage or collection, and they don't really let that out to the public. And the fact that you guys are, and you're sharing these with everybody, that's the phenomenal part for us. Because go ahead.
The big thing we would ultimately like to do is to get these in some sort of exhibit place where people can actually come and see them, because there's nothing like seeing them in real life. But the problem, it's a big problem having the collection because it's a big responsibility. We've got to protect them, and we can't pass them on to just anybody. We've got to really qualify the bona fides and intentions of the next sort of custodian caretaker of these.
I was wondering what your forward plan might be on that front. So thank you for bringing that up, because this is so significant.
Yeah, and it's got to be the right person, because if you think about it, you don't want a sort of James Bond villain that says they're all mine and I'll put them in my cellar and only I get to look at them.
Exactly.
And equally, you could get somebody, and you could get a group of people that want to pulverize this collection for political or religious reasons, and to make it publicly known that they've done it. And they pay big money to just do that, because the value to certain groups of people would be so high that, we'll just destroy it. But so we've really got to make sure that whoever we find is the right person for this, or the right organisation, and that they're going to allow the public to see them.
Yeah, so many of the big museums, they only display an eighth or a quarter of what they actually have, and that's sad. And I realize there aren't enough days and people. Yay, he's back.
Yeah, I think we got you back. I called you. I ended up calling you on a different through Facebook there. So can you hear us? Okay.
Okay. No, that's what. No, Skype just cut me off. I think you can only talk for an hour, then he cuts you. But I'm back. I can hear you perfectly, Jeff.
Okay, good. Can you guys hear him? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, good.
We were just talking, Hamilton, about the next custodian of the collection, what we wanted to ensure happened, with the next people that are looking after it. And I was just saying that we want to make sure it's the right kind of person or organisation who protect it and allow the public to see it.
Well, I think the important thing is the amount of effort that's taken to get it this far. Now it's back together as a group. It's got to stay as a group. It can't ever be split up again.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's very important. Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
They're not commodities now. They're not just items to be hoarded on the market. There's a serious reverence around them. And that being the case, we've really got to make sure we've got to look after it while we've got it, and make sure that when that baton's passed to the next custodian, that they do exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm not actually dead yet, so it doesn't occur. But as there is a good series of lawyers there behind the scenes to sort of make sure it all flows as we want it to. Put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that, like you said, finding the next custodians that would be able to carry on what you're doing and keep it all in one place, keep it all together. And I was thinking about, having to, keep this stuff safe too until that day comes. I mean, and insurance on it or whatever. I mean, it's got to be, I would be scared to death, quite honestly. I'd be scared to death to have some of these items and afraid that somebody would try to steal them from me or something. I'd be on pins and needles every day about that.
I can't think about it, or I would never sleep for the rest of my life.
That's true. Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah.
Just got to pretend it's sort of, oh, don't worry about it. It's all right. It's the only way you can deal with it. Honestly, if you sat and thought about it, every time you moved one of these pieces around for filming, you'd be tearing your hair out with stress. You can't let it get at you.
Yep, that's very true. I'm going to bring up a picture of this. This is the Vibasian. Yes, thank you. Vibasian cup. And this is a phenomenal piece right here. I am absolutely blown away by this. And we've talked a little bit about rituals, and I know that I think you had a researcher by the name of Dan Jones that was working with you, but he was kind of poo-pooing the whole idea of these rituals because he wasn't finding anything on it. But in fact, there really wouldn't be anything, in my opinion. There wouldn't be some things written down about different rituals that may go through. Now, on an entry level, when they bring in a new recruit into the Knights Templar, there's going to be a certain level of coming in indoctrination and what he might have to go through. But as you go up in your higher ranks, I'm thinking there would have to be some sort of a ritual. Isn't that kind of what you're thinking as well? And I know that Gretchen probably has some information on this as well. But what's your thoughts on that?
Totally agree. I mean, if you look at it in like what you call modern terms, it's only the same as like a Masonic society. Is that your initial joining of the order? You get a rule book, you're told what's going on, but then you progress through all the however many degrees there are, and each one is a secret until you join that particular level of Freemasonry. You're not allowed to know what's going on within the temple. And I think within the Templar organisation, there's no documentation. Just to start with, it was destroyed 800 years ago. The knowledge is gone. But very clearly, in every order, the same with the Hospitallers or the Teutonics, there were different levels, different ranks of people.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And it definitely would be something that I think would be, passed down through, you like you said, you wouldn't know until it's time for you to be brought into that level of ranking. I don't know if that's the right word to use, ranking. But you wouldn't know until you brought in, and then and then there's going to be maybe a level above you that you're not going to know anything about as well. I know that Gretchen has probably done a lot of research on this sort of thing.
The oral tradition is so strict and so rigorous that I don't think we can possibly appreciate that today. Our culture is so casual, so laid back. But the discipline of oral tradition is astonishing, and it's akin to being an athlete, and not everybody can make that happen, can produce a result like that within them. And the libation vessel is an incredible piece, because the beard I agree is John the Baptist here, because in iconic lore, of course, he was beheaded. So we know immediately it's John the Baptist, and his beard is layered in 3 sections. So is this meaning that you are now at the 3rd level, and this vessel is containing the entirety of that welcoming gesture of sharing what's within the vessel of knowledge? So it's an astonishingly beautiful piece, and of course it has the cross pate on it, the Templar cross. It's astonishing. I've never seen anything like it. But yes, it is conjecture. Hamilton is right. We don't know everything, and perhaps we don't want to.
Yeah, true.
Because then that would take some of the fun out of this. But oral tradition, when the Templars were taken out, as it were, and I've always been of the mind, we're not talking about just one guy on a horse or 20,000 knights across Europe. It takes 3 to 6 men to keep one knight on a horse. And they were merchants. They made wine, horseshoes, tiles. They were farming. They were in business big time across the board, and they were embedded in with the merchant guilds, merchant traders. So you know this knowledge of ecstatic, if you will, prayer and perhaps gifts of sight that can be bestowed from above down to earth, spread organically throughout that network. So we're not talking night to night, and if you take out 1,000 nights, it's all gone. No, no, it's an organic thing because human beings are organic, and the language changes over time. Even our language today has changed so much with the addition of new words because of our technology, the way we handle ourselves with each other. So things do change. That's natural. And so the traditions that were rigorously protected amongst that knightly monkish order are filtered out into the merchant classes, then got passed down father to son or adopted son. And of course, you know, the ladies often fill those shoes too.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you have to watch me. I will talk if you let me. So
Yeah, that's fine. You've got so much knowledge on this.
Well,
it's always good to learn.
The thing that people don't really take into account is that whoever is looking at this stuff now, we're all looking through it with 21st century eyes, which is totally different to the people who were looking at it in period. Because, you know, when you look at a lot of the pieces, there's loads of little symbols on them. There's triangles, there's snakes, there's alpha omegas, which when you look at it today, it's a meaningless thing. It's just a symbol. But when you actually start unpicking it, going back 800 years, the people looking at it would know exactly what it means. A triangle in symbology means a door. Cross keys aren't two keys. It's the symbol of the Pope or the Vatican. It still is. It's on the Vatican's flag. Alpha and Omega aren't two Greek letters. It's symbolizing a complete thing. It's the beginning and the end. And trying to understand and pick through the sort of multitude of kind of encoded meanings within all of these objects, it's absolutely fascinating.
Oh yeah, and you're exactly right, because we are, like you said, we're looking at this through our eyes today, and you know, the things that mean something to us today would be gibberish to some people 200 years from now. They would look at this and not understand exactly what it is they're seeing and be able to interpret it the way we do today. We can glance at a symbol and know exactly what it means. You know, you know, I'm going to throw something out like the Apple, you know, the Apple icon that's used for Apple, you know, iPhones and that. You look at that today, we all know exactly what that means. But 300, 400 years from now, they'll look at that and not have a clue what it means. And so I see exactly what you mean in that respect, because all these symbols, you know, they might know what some of them represent or whatever, but could be looked at completely different from what they did when they were created. And they would have been commonplace at that time, I would think, right? Like you were just saying.
I wouldn't use the word commonplace, but I understand what you're saying, Jeff.
Right. Yeah. Maybe not commonplace because it was an order, but yeah.
And this is where it gets murky, and I'm sure Hamilton and Carl know this quite well. You had to exist within the religion of the day, and you had to be very covert if you had a slightly different viewpoint on an incident in the Bible, or how human beings actually interact with their world intuitively. So often it's like an onion, and these symbols have multiple meanings, so that you can completely explain away justifiably, so you would not be marked as a heretic. So that the triangle becomes is a symbol for the Holy Trinity. So and as Hamilton said, it's a doorway. Then you have the tetragrammaton, that triangle where all light comes through, and accountability. So it gets very complex.
No,
and
absolutely.
that's why you start with a picture when you're talking to somebody, and you introduce them to a new idea through the picture.
Right.
So,
One of the users were asking about the libation cup, and they were saying something about the fact that would this? It was actually a member by the name of David, and he was asking about this cup, the vessel. Would this, because it's John the Baptist that's carved on the four sides of it, would this have something to do with the where they were being accused of drinking from the head of John the Baptist? Where it's starting to throw that heretical type stuff. Is that sound plausible at all? Is that something that might?
It's as good as anyone's conjecture on why they've done that, But equally, it could be that it can be seen by everybody around when, if a master was holding a vessel, and everyone let's say, for example, they were in a circle. The head faces out, so it's given everyone a chance to see the same image.
Yep. Yeah, not only that, but and I know that cup that wasn't used as a cup. Obviously, it has that little niche, and it's got that little niche in the corner, which it looks. And I think that Hamilton, either you or Carl, you had explained it would have some sort of like a silver bowl that went inside there with like a little spout or something where you would maybe use that for mixing and pour something out. Is that correct?
I think we're both confident in that whatever was mixed in it, there's no marks actually in the bottom of the vessel of like a pestle or grinding marks or anything at all. So I think it's safe to assume that it had some kind of inner sleeve, be it silver, gold. We don't know, but I mean, it seems so precise, and there's no marks on the inside at all. It doesn't really make sense.
Right.
And it was clearly designed to pour something into a separate cup, because it's the lip on the top of it is flat. It's about half an inch wide, so it's not designed for drinking from.
Right.
And the cutout, it must have had some form of a spout to pour out into a smaller vessel, we believe anyway.
Right. And that makes sense, because it looks like it might be something you would use to mix ingredients together and then, of course, pour out into the cup that people would then drink from, which may very well be
For sure. I mean, there's no reason for the vessel to exist unless you were mixing things together.
Right.
If you were simply just pouring wine or something into whatever the ritual vessels are, you don't need a mixing vessel. It defies any logic. So, again, we haven't got the faintest idea what it was they were mixing together, but very clearly something was being mixed together.
Yep. I wanted to go to the next item too that we were looking at, and again, this is one that really fascinates me, and I was blowing trying to say the name of it. The reliquary box. Is that how it's pronounced?
Yeah.
Okay, did I do that all right? And that's this item here, and there's a picture of you, Hamilton, holding it when you took it out of the chest that it was kept in. And so we're looking at a picture of you holding it, where we see on the one side, this is the opposite side has what you guys had talked about being Mary and Jesus being on the back side. Now we're looking at the side that would be who, the king? Was that described?
You've got St. George on
St. George.
Yep. Dragon.
And it's showing him slaying a dragon on there as well. Now, what would this box have been used for? What would it have been to hold? I guess what I'm kind of wondering about.
I mean, the general purpose of any kind of reliquary right through the ages is they tend to have been made to hold something specific. I mean, within the normal church, it tends to be the bones of a saint or a specific item that belonged to a known person. But what this one was made to hold, we simply don't know, unfortunately.
True.
No way.
Right.
I was wondering that myself because it's of the time of Henry the Navigator, and it perhaps my flights of fancy special navigation tools or plotting tools, compass, etc. But I was wondering what you thought about that.
Well, Henry the Navigator, being sort of one of the younger sons of the king, I mean, he came to head the Order of Christ, which was the sort of the rebranding of what the Templars were. And I mean, it was Henry who set out on a lot of the voyages down to Africa, and he was the first of the great Portuguese explorers before Vasco da Gama or anybody else came along. And I mean, Henry chose to build his residence up at Tomar, adjacent to where the Templar castle was. I mean, the ruins of it are still there. We don't know. I mean, it's the only piece out of the whole hoard that post-dates the Templars. But the actual architectural elements of the box, I mean, Carl can explain it better. Carl, the elements on the building itself.
When you look at the box, it's like the roof of a building, and there's a line of tracery, like pierced metal on it. You can see it on the top. It surrounds the edge of the building, the top of the box. Yeah. When you go to the Convento Cristo in Tomar, which is where you've got the castle, and within that you've got the Shirola, and then behind the Shirola it just goes on and on and on. There's at least 5 cloistered sections, 5 separate cloisters, and one of the sections is Manuelian design. And you can clearly see exactly the same piercing rails on the building of this cloister that's exactly the same as on the reliquary box.
Wow.
So, there's some architectural symbolism that you can see actually in the building in the Convent of Christ in Tomar. But it's all the other stuff around it as well, the fact that that's the only image we've ever seen that depicts St. George as an old man with a long beard. Because if you look at all the images you've seen of St. George, he's a fighting age of a young, late 20s, early 30-year-old man. And we've never seen that done anywhere. So that is really intriguing. The Jesus on the back is unusual because normally Jesus is in a loincloth when you see him with the thorn of the crown of thorns.
Right. Yep, with the crown of thorns on it.
He's in a habit, so that's curious, and it's even more curious that they will put Jesus on the back of the box.
Right.
Yes, he should be front and center.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
So it's full of fantastic riddles that, we'd be delighted if somebody could tell us what they mean, because it's, there's so much to learn from this. And somebody might have a painting or something that there's some obvious synergy with this, and they go, oh, well, I can see why that's put together. But, today it's nobody's come forward with anything that we can say, oh, that's why they've done that.
On the roof line, Carl, there appear to be 4 little beasties. Do you have any idea of what you think those might be?
On the corner?
Well,
I was wondering if they were salamanders or little dragon depictions.
There's some reptilian kind of depiction, and they're not exactly a gargoyle or a punky thunk or anything like that, but they're a fantasy figure, and they're not an animal that we know of. But they're usually to ward off evil, aren't they? When
Yes.
when we gargoyles or punky thunks Gothic architecture.
Really
It's the design to sort of ward off and
Repel evil, yes.
yes.
Looking to see if I could make this a little bigger, but unfortunately, my picture I can't make it larger there. But yeah, you can kind of see on the corners here something, some kind of the creatures you're speaking of.
It's had some work done to it as well in the past, since it's been discovered. That some restorations, some bits, that need attention, but we haven't really touched it at all. There's some of the traceries missing off the roof line as well, and it's involved, but it's remarkably survived in remarkably well condition considering the job.
Yeah, really, it is.
The big thing about that, which we found really curious, was the fact that it's made out of base metal rather than a precious metal. It's cost. Yet again, they've used a very top artisan to fashion and craft that box. Why wouldn't you have used gold or silver? And the only answer we kind of come up with, which seems plausible, but it is only an idea, is that maybe the idea of using base metal was in homage to the Templar beliefs of staying modest and living a pure life without luxury, and that's why it was made out of iron.
A humble metal, not that is one of the markers of the Cistercians and the Templars, was the affordability to roll out the franchise by not requiring or desiring the gold leaf, the jewels, the bedecked altars, etc. It was the architecture that counted and the business that counted. But yes, that is a curious thing, and it's so highly decorated. The reliquary box is so highly ornate. There's nothing simple about it other than the metal that it was created out of.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Very curious.
It's like something out of a movie. You'd almost think a fantasy creators designed that because it's that good. It's that mysterious look, and everything, patina, the color, the size, all the little intriguing details on it. It's incredible. It's a beautiful item. It really is.
I have to ask you this, both you and Hamilton. So this is actually a really dangerous area to be involved in, because relic hunting, if you will, of the modern era with these incredibly precious objects, and of course religious connotations. I guess it's a two-parter. Have you ever found yourself in a dicey situation whilst trying to acquire an object? Or has your experience been friendly, or are you even able to ask or tell?
I think Hamilton's best asking. All I can say is my main experience in the past was dealing in classic cars. I've been in some very dangerous situations. People are strange, and there's all kinds of people out there. But I don't think. What do you think, Hamilton? I don't think you've had any really bad experiences, have you?
No, I mean the whole thing. Although it's been kind of a long process, it's actually been surprisingly simple. I mean, this is my business anyways, what I've always done. But, it was just one of those weird things that, again, we've not talked about because it sounds peculiar. The number of coincidences and people that I was coming across and leads that I was picking up when all of this was going on 7-8 years ago, tracking the initial things down. It was almost so simple. It was it was being laid on a plate. I mean, bear in mind, there was stuff in Switzerland that had been there for 40, 50 years. Stuff had changed hands numerous times. Nobody ever really wants to talk, but it just came so easily. I mean, the only things that we've had, and it was exactly what we were expecting, is there is always going to be a group of people who are totally negative because either you stole it, you made it in your shed, it's some ridiculous scam, you're out for the money. But, we knew that was coming, and I don't even react to it anymore. It's a shrug of the shoulders. The stuff's real. We've told you what the story is. You're passing comments on things you know nothing about, you've never seen it, you never even bother to contact us, and yet you find it necessary to slate us. So, don't worry about it. If that makes you happy, do it. I don't care.
Well, yeah, and it definitely brings up that little thought. You think of like Raiders of the Lost Ark or something when they're out trying to find a particular piece or something, and the danger that's involved in that. You got to beat dark. Hey, come over here. I got this. You just wonder what that's all about when you're looking to go buy something. Or look at an item to see if you want to buy it from this person or not. So you think there's all kinds of like weird stuff involved in that.
Not in the least. I mean, if you're dealing in Middle Eastern stuff and you're trying to go over to Syria or the Gulf states, you're going to get yourself a problem. But this was never like that. You're tracking something down that appeared in Europe 60 odd years ago. It just, you followed the pathways of, well, we know it went to Switzerland, where did it go, where was it split up to? You're not in the leagues of the people who are going out trying to kind of trade in Assyrian or Babylonian or Iraqi type finds. That's where you're going to get yourself in bother. We've had nothing. I've had nothing anyway. Nothing
aside from the dangers of a hangover, though.
We've had loads of those.
That's just normal whether you're out looking for clutter or doing something else. I mean, that's just part of the course.
Yeah, you meet in a pub and have a pint or two and then talk about what you're gonna you can
usually tell when we've had a good session when we've been filming because we'll be wearing sunglasses on the day after.
That's a good point. I have to watch for that.
We've absolutely maxed out the night before.
I will pay attention to that next time. Secrets out.
There was another item that honestly, this particular item, and I'm going to bring up the picture of the helm that you had, Hamilton, that you had talked about. This particular helmet that has the Nazi stamp or whatever, that brass. I don't know if it's made out of brass or what. Put on the
crest on the front of it. Yeah, from Himmler.
Yes, and I mean you're talking about Heinrich Himmler and having and then I saw the picture where he showed that sitting in the castle there up on the windowsill, and it could be the very same one. It looks like it very well could be. I mean, wow, this piece intrigues me so very, very much, especially if it was in his hands. And you had some information about how the regime at that time was looking for these different artifacts, were they not?
Yeah, I mean, Himmler himself was an absolute ardent collector of arms and armor, anything from the German medieval period. And I mean, he himself, prior to the days of the Nazi Party, he was as much as an amateur historian and fascinated by the whole Grail legends and mythology as we are.
Mm-hmm.
And he was actually an extremely well-read and very, very well-informed historian. It just kind of all went a little bit astray, shall we say, a little bit later in his life.
Yeah, and this piece just fascinates me. And one of the user or members here just reached out with a question about that, which was what I was just thinking. Is that I'm sure there's probably a possibility that if they were collecting some of this stuff, there may be more items that might still be in Germany or something, or hidden away somewhere over there. Do you think that might be a possibility?
Well, of the stuff that was looted out of Babelsberg in, I think it was May 45, there was a complete armory room in Himmler's personal quarters. I mean, there was quite a quantity of pieces. I've got another piece that was his.
Oh, wow.
There are some pieces in America, and there are quite a few pieces in Russia. I mean, when you get in the circle of arms and armour, it is known where some of the pieces are. But again, it's not like the sort of thing that's broadcasted around. We all operate in our own little secret world of who's doing what. But yes, there are pieces about.
That's fascinating. And I know that, and like you had mentioned earlier, there's probably a lot of pieces that, well, there are obviously more pieces that we have not seen yet. That's part of your collection. If you have over 100 in this particular collection, and I'm assuming that that's going to be, some of those are going to be coming out in the next season of the show, which we're all looking forward to. I know I am. But one of the other things too was that these items, that it's so interesting that you've not only taken these items to go and have them looked at by a particular specialist in the field, but you kind of leaving the interpretation open on that. You really don't, people that say, well, they don't have any conclusions. They haven't come to any conclusions, but in retrospect, that's kind of where you're leaving that open to other people for interpretation. Is that correct?
Well, we can't make any conclusions. I mean, you're looking at old items, and it's for everybody to conject and
Right.
to add light onto them. Some people might just have one little nugget of information that could change the whole story on these items or on one item. And we're open for people to enlighten us on it.
And that's what's really neat about the fact that you're bringing this out to the public and not keeping it locked away in a someplace. It would be really nice that people would. I know personally, I would, if these items were in a museum or on display someplace. I would try my best to get there and to see them for myself and get to be that close to it rather than seeing it on television. I mean, that would be fascinating, and we're really
It's funny because, well, all the items are all packed up and locked away, and occasionally we have to go and find a specific item for it for whatever reason. And it's as exciting for us every time when we get them out and look at them again. It's a big thing because we don't have them on the shelf or on the table in the living room. They're actually locked away and in safe storage. But it's brilliant when you get them out and you can see them again. It's just, and every time it's as exciting as the first time we've seen them. They have that thing about them.
Absolutely.
Well, I think
go
just going back on what you were saying, Jeff, that there's always been rumours of what were the Templars doing. They were obviously up to something behind closed doors.
Right.
And I mean, with the group of ritual vessels, what I think it has definitely done, it's enabled you to stand up and say, well, yes, it wasn't a rumour. They were certainly doing something, because if they weren't, well, you wouldn't have all of this stuff. It wouldn't have been looked after and considered sacred. It would never have been manufactured. So you kind of proved a point that, yes, we can now say that there were things going on. But I don't think me and Carl, or particularly anybody else, is ever likely to be able to say what was going on. Other than everybody's got their own ideas, whether it was regular religion, whether it was hallucinogenics, whether it was weird John the Baptist things. I don't know. I mean, everybody will have their own ideas, and whatever you say or I say, somebody's going to disagree with you anyway. So It's easier just to leave it open. And, well, it's there for discussion. Nobody's right or wrong, and nobody ever will be, I don't think.
Right. And
right.
the interest of it too. Go ahead, Gretchen.
Exactly.
Oh, sorry. Just to say that, Hamilton is right. There is not a letter saying Sir John Smith in a initiation ritual into the order did X, Y, and Z, said X, Y, and Z, ingested herbs, whatever. It does not exist. Only the trial materials that were gained under torture and exist. Of course, there are some consistencies, but some of those responses, that was, forced confessions with a witch hunting book. Some of these answers are very dependable under torture, especially if they were told to say it. But it's good to talk about ideas. It's good to bring up questions, because that's when perhaps an inspiration will happen, and
Mhm.
somebody may key into a potential that might be traced down. But that's what we're all trying to do, and that's what makes this so riveting and so
Right,
exciting.
and going on top of that too is the fact that if we did know, then it's kind of like you're searching for different items that you've done, and I think Hamilton alluded to this earlier. It's the finding of the next item or the searching for the next item that gives you the excitement. So if we knew about all the rituals that they had done, okay, the excitement would be gone. So, but for you to sit and think, oh man, I wonder what they were doing. I wonder what kind of things that they had going on. That is actually more exciting than having the present of knowing. I think in the end,
Definitely.
yeah. So that I mean that
The
gives
journey's the journey's always more interesting than the
yeah,
destination, isn't it?
yes, exactly
Do
right.
you have in your collection, if you're allowed to say, anything that relates to maritime or naval activities?
Maritime or naval? I don't think so. No, nothing springs to mind. Not of the sort of temporary type era. No, no, nothing at all I can think of.
Perhaps that's what you need to find.
Yeah, you need to try some of that. Oh, Carl's looking for something back there.
That's ship in the bottle.
Oh,
But
yeah.
There it
There
is.
you go.
That's the
There's your
secret right
maritime right
there.
there.
That's it.
He made the shark's head sort of top for it. Little.
Oh, that's awesome right there. That's
I used to watch him.
Right
I've
there.
still got the box of all his tools, how he used to make them, and they're great, aren't they?
oh, they are. It's fascinating. Something I wanted to bring up too, and I know that this is, maybe a little bit of a touchy subject for you guys, but and we're going to wrap this up here in just a little bit. I try to keep this to 2 hours. We're at about an hour and a half right now, so just bear with us a little bit here. But one of the key things that I know that was brought up by you were having an interview, it was a radio interview, and there was a lady by the name of Michelle, and I'm sorry, Michelle, if you ever see this, but I did want to give you mention on this that I did watch the interview that you did with Carl and Hamilton, but you brought up the point of the academia and in how they look upon what you guys are doing because you're collectors and they're academia, so they look at this. I mean, they probably don't like the idea that you have these things, right?
It's, we're the heretics. We're the antichrist to the establishment because we didn't they're not found in a controlled environment. So if it was in a controlled environment, then provenance is very easy to test, and our characters can't be assassinated. But the British Museum and most museums around the world are full of items that have been found by non-academics in the past, and they saunter the way through there. We think we've got as much right to talk about these items and present them in any manner that we feel fit to.
Totally agree.
Sadly, a large part of the academic world would find our position not one that they would prefer. They'd like them to belong to another established body. It's a big find for all so-called lay people to stumbled upon, and until maybe one day that in some sort of institutional museum, then we're going to be out. We knew we were going to be out for criticism from day one.
Yeah, I can imagine. And that's something that I know that, like, for Hamilton, and again, the fact that he's been collecting these types of things all these years, you look at the people that are in academia and they're going to say, well, we have the knowledge, we've been to college and we've done all this, and I have a degree in these things. But you look at the knowledge that someone like yourself and Hamilton would have, I'm thinking would be greater in some respects.
That's part of the problem. I've had it forever. You didn't go to university. You haven't got a degree. No, but I've been doing this my entire life.
Exactly.
You have a degree, but you have never handled an old item in your entire life. All you've ever done
Exactly.
is lemon. You know, this
Yes, and
concept that we've had, and it particularly gripes me because, you know, that I just get looked down on my nose at. You know nothing. You simply have these things. Well, yes, but there is a reason why I have them, because I know exactly what I'm doing, and I've done it for 40 years. That's why I have them, you idiots. You know, and it really does wind me up. But, you know, at the end of the day, until such time as these people decide to kind of talk to us sensibly, you know what? You don't get to look at them. When you do talk sensibly, then you can look. Simple as that.
Mm-hmm.
it's easy to see what the two of you have achieved. It is so impressive. And I do understand what you're saying. I have not been to university either. I'm self-taught. I've been studying the Templars since 1995, and that's when the bug captured me, as it were, and I just can't think of anything else I'd rather be investigating in my life. This is what I do. It's part of who I am, and the education has become so highly structured, going back decades. You know, the Victorians were hiring tutors. Yes, there were established schools by Henry VIII, but the structure of higher education has become so hard that if you stray outside of it, you are anathema. And history is taught in modules, 45-minute module slots, and it's outside of time and space, and they don't ever connect the how did the Templars get here? Well, the Vikings, the Norse, had specific knowledge, and they eventually, you know, the Templars are in broad the descendants of the Vikings. You know, the Rollo married into the King of Paris's household and became a duke, became royalized, and all his knowledge went right into the aristocracy of France. And not long after, you end up with the last great Viking raider conquering England. So, you know, it's all joined together. And that's what nobody wants to talk about, that domino effect. And as business people, as an antiquarian, you know, Carl and Hamilton know this. You know, they know things that a structured university can't put together.
I think as well, when you actually go to these places, you compress time. So when you first start off looking at the Templars, it seems you can't really get your head around that distance of time between our generation and their generation. But the more you look into it, the more the time compresses, and the closer you get to those people. And they were people, you know, with the same desires and dreams and fears that modern humans have. You know, but they were very incredible with what they did with the commercial side. You know, they were amazing merchants and bankers, and you know, they created the first tourist checkbook, didn't they? Really, with you know, you could deposit 1,000 pieces of silver in a preceptory in England, and you could travel to Jerusalem and cash the note in incremental parts at any Templar place. And that's an amazing thing that was done all that long time ago.
Exactly. Yeah. That is fascinating.
And people trafficking is an issue today, and it was an issue then. And the Templars saw the need for protection on the road of people's worldly goods and coins. So yes, you could count on being on a Templar ship and not be robbed halfway through across the Mediterranean and pitched overboard. So, you know, and these are problems that we face today. So yes, you're right. That's right.
Yeah, because you think about how difficult it must have been for somebody to go on a pilgrim, say from England to all the way to Jerusalem if he wants to go that far. I mean, you needed some resource behind you. I don't think a lay person could afford to go, number one.
Right.
Number two, if you was wealthy enough that you could fund that kind of trip, without the intelligence that the Templars provided, it would have been beyond, so dangerous that it probably wouldn't have happened for the majority of people that did go there via the Templars' infrastructure. They had hospitals, they had. So you could get food and drink off them. You could get medicine. You could get cash in money. You had security with them. You had transport. All the logistic elements that they put together in that time was breathtaking in terms of the scale of it and the organizational skills. That's what I find.
Yes, they were absolutely ferocious as well. First on the battlefield, last off, 3-to-1 odds, no ransom, and the lay brother system that would allow you to join for 2 years, have an incredible experience, contribute, and then go back to your families.
Yes.
So it was a much broader subject than what is allowed to be discussed academically. And you're quite right, Carl, in Hamilton, when you say they were people. So how do we respond to life today? What kind of infrastructures do we need? And how do we communicate with each other as far as the transmission of ideas, exchanges in culture? And they really did not believe in shooting the messenger. They wanted to learn from anybody. So that was used against them as well. But that was also one of the secrets of their success, was being able to take ideas, technology, and apply them to themselves. So European mindset was quite closed, and if a good idea came from Judaism or Islam, then that was an evil thing in itself. So, but they knew better. They knew practicality when they saw it.
Yeah, they did. It's fabulous. We were talking about, when the Templars built Chartres Cathedral, the fact that the curve, the technology curve, was so acute, it was almost supernatural. He said, "How is it possible to have gone from there to there in such a small period? It's unprecedented, that technology leap." And he said the only way they could have done it is with some form of supernatural knowledge, or they discovered things that weren't available. The skill set or the maths to put that together, and what they achieved after that was fantastic.
Yes, it's so exciting and awe-inspiring. And did they discover that under Temple Mount? And then, work with scholars to release the information? Did they absorb engineering and mathematical knowledge from the East? And of course, then there's that leap of inspiration and brilliance. One of my favorite characters is Peter Peregrinus, who wrote about the magnetic properties of the lodestone, and that paper, in terms of navigation, was in use all the way up until the Age of Reason in the early 1700s. So he was talking about propulsion methods, and he was the Leonardo da Vinci of his day, and his patron was a king of Sicily, and he was creating machines of war, etc. But of course, not as much survives from his time period as we have of Leonardo. But he was the Leonardo of his day, and he's talking about ships that have propulsion that can take you to whatever land you wish to go in. And those impressive leaps of great intuition from these higher realms that wish us well and want us to grow as in partnership and as people and with technology. So these geniuses that we're blessed with from time to time that can help us spring forward. And then there's always that jealousy factor. The jealousy factor when you get someone with great gifts and of inspiration and skill that can apply them, the people around them feeling threatened by that and wanting to squish them. But Clever is the patron who will grab that individual and put them in charge of an awe-inspiring project like Chartres Cathedral.
Yeah,
So,
I suppose like the last century, we have to look at Tesla, don't we, to see
yeah,
that.
to understand that, that
exactly
leap.
right.
And of course, he dealt with the jealousy of Edison and big money and etc.
And then there's the theory that his ideas were stalled because of the petrodollar, was going to be under threat, because if energy is as ubiquitous and freely available as he believed it was, then these your sort of robber barons would be out of a job, and basically people would have free energy.
The financial infrastructure would completely change.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly right. And that's a shame too, because of the ideas that man had. And then all of his paperwork being, disappearing, and everything that he had. And somebody has it, and they're going to put it aside, and they're not going to do anything with it simply because they want to make that almighty dollar forcing people to pay for electricity that comes to them. It's just things like that. It's fascinating.
Well, I think as well, what happens with new technology is the powers that be hold it back for them to work out the roadmap of commercial exploitation. And if it takes them 50 years to work out a roadmap of monopoly, that's the time they'll release it. And they won't release the technology until they've completely harnessed the ability of turning it into money for them, and to make sure that other people can't have control of that technology until they've exploited and exhausted all of the revenue out of it.
Right, exactly.
So it could be today that there's fantastic technology sitting in laboratories or in offices, but we're not allowed to have them because they haven't figured a way to create the monopoly.
Yep, exactly right. And that's a shame. Well, this has been fascinating. You guys have just given us so much information and an inside look at all this. And I tell you, we know that you're working on season 2. You're finishing that up. We'd love to have you guys come back and at some point and talk with us again. And hopefully we can get Hamilton's connection figured out. So get him a laptop or something.
Great to see your face, Hamilton.
Right. But I did want to ask you this question. Now, season 1 has been out. How has being famous now, being on TV and in your 5 episodes, how has this changed your lives? Carl, if you want to go first, Carl, you can talk about that a little bit. How has this changed your life?
It's just classic, wasn't it? We get to do the show, and then COVID comes and we can't go out. So we haven't had any pleasure of fame or anything.
Yeah, there you go. That's true.
I did get recognised in Costco at the petrol station a few weeks ago. But it's not really something that we've had much exposure to, really. No, we haven't been out and people coming up asking for autographs, anything like that, because it's kind of a niche show, it's not mainstream, so the kind of people that watch it will see us, but we're not like a big Saturday night show, are we, where the masses are going to see us. But it's be nice if we got some free stuff out of it.
Hamilton, how about you? How has this changed your life?
I got recognised once in my local supermarket because, I don't do supermarkets. I'm not a shopper, and I got terribly confused by a one-way system they incorporated for something to do with COVID that I didn't even know it was a one-way system. And I was pushing the trolley the wrong way round because I didn't know where to find potatoes. And a man came over to me and said, "Oh, can I help you at all?" And I said, "Yes, I just don't understand. But come with me, sir. Here, what do you want? Potatoes, thank you." So he then said, "I did enjoy your show on the TV last week, Mr. White."
There you go.
There you go.
Which is kind of great. But all that means is he's going to go and tell all his mates and everybody else that, hey, I saw the man off the telly and he didn't even know how to buy a potato.
What a way to be remembered, right? Or be talked about. Yeah.
That's what I'm going to be remembered for by the general public, is the guy who couldn't buy a potato properly. I think that really is the extent of certainly my fame anyway.
That's hilarious. Oh my gosh.
I had visions of hordes of people waiting every time I arrived somewhere. It would be like the Beatles in the 1960s. I don't know, women wailing because he's here. Like nothing. Like nothing.
Yeah. Well, all these women throwing
time.
themselves at you.
Give it time.
Well, that's true. And you've got your hat, your fedora hat that you wear. And I tell you, honestly, if you weren't wearing that hat and I passed you on the street, I probably wouldn't know who you were. But with that hat on, I mean, it's
exactly.
Do you wear that all the time? Whenever you go out, do you have that hat on?
Yep. Yeah, I wear it when I'm in. I've got it on my head now. It's just part of my. I don't know. It's just like I don't change my clothes. I don't do different forms of clothing. It just disagrees with me. It stresses me out. So it's like there's my clothes. Put them on, go out.
Yeah, because I said to Hamilton once when I met him in Monaco, and after about 3 months, I said, can I ask you a question? He said, yeah. I said, why do you always wear the same clothes? He goes, I don't. He said, I've got 30 of these shirts and 20 of these trousers, and they're all exactly the same. So,
go to the closet. What do I wear today? Open up the closet and everything. All the shirts are exactly the same.
what shall I wear today?
My logic, and it always has been, because I've worn the same design shirt since I left school at 16. I don't want the bother of having to sit and scratch my head.
Yeah, where am
I going? What should I wear to go here?
Do these shoes match my shirt? Yeah.
He has a point. He truly does.
Are more important things to think about than whether or not my trousers match my shirt, or do I wear a green shirt? I don't know. I'm not interested. Boring.
Classic. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
you know what you get for Christmas now, don't you?
yeah, he's easy to buy for, right? Oh my goodness, this has been wonderful, guys. I got to tell you, I am so honored that you came on the show with us today. This has been fantastic, and I know I did glance over. I'm watching the chat going by from YouTube and Facebook and Twitch and stuff, and everybody like Callie Lewis just said, you two are so funny, and
You're great.
Yeah, awesome. This has been just
So
a
fun.
wonderful afternoon. I have enjoyed it thoroughly.
If we come back on next time, I mean, we didn't actually get to the topic of starting to discuss the whole theories about Templars coming over to the States and what we're going to hopefully try and tie up with Gretchen and Wayne. And, we've got a lot of ideas and thoughts on that.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I just wanted to talk to you two and hear about you, and if you'd like to do that, it would be an honor and privilege. And you two are just brilliant, and if I were the head of a university, I'd give you doctorates.
Oh, absolutely.
So I mean, you're brilliant, and that's just clear to see. And I so appreciate what you've done. You've just turned everything on its head, and we have so much we can talk about now and go forward with, including location and names and dates and objects. Just,
we've done two. Go ahead, Hamilton. Sorry.
If we do it again and we can sort the connection out, then I don't know. Maybe we can have a couple of objects that weren't in the first series that we can have, and I don't know, just do a bit of an exclusive as to here's few things nobody else has seen or something. Maybe
that would be awesome.
I'm going to get the vapors here, Hamilton.
Oh my gosh, I would be so honored.
I'm going to have the vapors.
It'd be good for you to see some of the chalice worshipping panels that we've got, which are
definitely.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I'm so fascinated by that too.
I mean, what I will do, Gretchen, or both of you, if you send me through your email addresses, I mean, I've been trying to put sort of a little booklet together with a lot of photos and a bit more information that's supposed to happen and hasn't quite happened. But I can send you through a sort of PDF. I mean, Carl's already got one that's just like my own notes on the story, and there's a photos of sort of about 40 of the items in it.
Wow.
That's kind of going to be the first little booklet that will come out. Not just yet, but I can certainly send it through to the pair of you if you want to have a flick through it.
I would certainly be honored by that.
Oh,
would,
my
would
gosh.
guard it highly.
And I mean, that means that you can sort of, it'll give you more background on the actual story. So for next time, you know, it'll throw up questions that perhaps you haven't thought of yet.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would be honored. Absolutely.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. And look forward to talking to you about Wisconsin if you have the time and would like to do so.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, that was a whole nother subject, because of course, you know, I have had the very honored pleasure of interviewing Wayne and Gretchen and Sean Williamson with Team Templar North America twice. We did a two-parter because I just knew there was going to be so much information to cover that we had to cut it into two parts, which we did. And it's out on YouTube if anybody wants to check it out. There it is on YouTube at our channel at JFree906. So you can check it out there. But I'm knowing that, you know, there's a future there, possibly with you all. I'm just, my little teeny part of that. It just fascinates me to no end that I was able to be, you know, a little piece of part of that. It just.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff, for giving us a way to connect and talk to so many people. And for Sean, I haven't even met Sean yet. You know, for all of us to be able to speak together, that was fantastic. And having a chance to actually talk to Carl and Hamilton, that's just incredible. So I'm just so thrilled to have come across you both, and I feel well placed, as if I'm in the right time in the right place because of a blessing from somewhere else.
Yeah, no, I mean, I want to thank Jeff and yourself, Gretchen, for inviting us on. It's been great. We've enjoyed meeting you, and you've been really warm and good with us.
Really good.
Thank
And
you.
Linda, thank you, and Jack, if you're listening, thank you as well.
Yep, Jack, my regular co-host, is out there watching today. He stepped aside so Gretchen could come in and join us. And I tell you, you know, Carl and Hamilton both. If you guys are looking for any researchers, this lady right here, I'm telling you, she has got a head full of knowledge that could help you down the road. I'll just throw that out there because.
I'd be thrilled. There's always something more to learn, but I would be.
Oh yeah,
thrilled.
absolutely.
Well, you'd be made up with that book that Hamilton sends you, because it's got some fantastic things to see.
Oh, I can't wait. Honestly, I'm going to be doing that right as soon as we get done. I'm going to be sending them my email.
Whatever the best email is, I'll send it through to you tomorrow. And then when you've had chance to go through it, we'll figure something else out and see where we go from there, and do an American chat and a Mark II chat on this. You know, we're up for it. It's fun, you know.
Just so can't wait.
You guys are wonderful, and I know that now that I've gotten a chance to meet you and just realize that you guys are just down to earth people that are on an amazing journey and have an amazing job of finding this stuff. It's just, you know, like I said earlier, we're kind of living, you know, through your vicariously through you guys and what you're doing, and I applaud you, and I'm really looking forward to season 2 coming out and seeing what you guys have to share on that too. So good luck with that, guys, and good luck with Team Templar in the future too.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, hang out just a minute. I'm going to wrap things up here and say goodbye. It is right at 2 hours. We hit it perfectly. So I really appreciate it. Hey, all of you that have been watching today, thank you so much for being here. And I know a lot of people will watch us down the road as because it stays out on YouTube, it stays at Twitch, it stays on Facebook in our group for as long as we need it to be out there. So feel free to reach out and watch it. And especially YouTube, I think, is kind of the easiest place to watch it if you're not a member of our group. But again, if you don't mind, give us a like on there if you've liked our content here today, and if you would be so kind to subscribe. That helps us so much down the road. It really does. I've kind of explained that a little bit before, but I don't want to beat people up about that. Just that little subscribe down there button down at the bottom, if you would be so kind. We appreciate that so much. Again, thank you, Carl. Thank you, Hamilton and Gretchen. Thank you for being here and bringing your expertise to the table. You guys are awesome, and I can't wait to have you back on the show.
Thanks.
Love all around.
We'll see you soon.
All right. We're going to wrap it up
Love
here.
all
You guys
around.
can hang out just for a minute, and I'm going to say goodbye. So we'll have a good night, or have a good day, everybody. And I know it's nighttime for you guys over in the UK. Thank you so much all for being here. Bye-bye now.